Hey, everybody, this is Josh McKinney, and I just want to welcome you to episode 209 of the I Suck at Jiu Jitsu show. So, today I had something totally different planned for you guys. I had a really good white belt focused episode. We'll get to it next week. But when I went to upload my episode, for some reason, something, and I can't figure it out. I've been messing with it all day, still can't figure out why it is happening, but something didn't record. And so like halfway through, probably a quarter of the way through, I have no sound on the episode. And time wise, I really need to get this episode out kind of on the struggle bus. And so what I decided to do is I decided to set a timer for when I need to be done podcasting and just go through. I always have listener mail questions ready to go. And it is for moments like this. Obviously, too, no editing on this one. I'm just uploading this one as is. No background music, no cool little intro with the diabolical leader of the Head Nod Squad, Josh McKinney. Nothing like it. You guys have no idea who's talking right now. But since this is pretty much like an old Suck Less Saturday for any of the ISAJ, ISAJJ listeners that are seasoned, that have been around for a while. You guys know about Suck Less Saturday, but I would do these unedited episodes where I would do listener mail. And so that's what we're doing today because, well, I guess I didn't really have any other choice. So I thought a good place to start is going to be this question. I don't know why I don't have any names on these questions. So if you ask this question, thank you. Hey, Josh, I'm new to jiu-jitsu and struggling with motivation. How do you stay motivated during the initial stages when the progress seems slow and discouraging? That is a great question, unnamed listener. Man, staying motivated, I don't know if that is the right wording anymore for me. I don't think that motivation is the best fuel for jujitsu. And the reason I say that is because sometimes you don't have any motivation. Black belts will agree with this. There are days that you don't have the motivation, but you know you should train. You know you want to train, but you just don't seem to be able to. The more you accept that, the more you say, "Oh, I'm unmotivated today," and then like you don't practice the habit, you don't go into class, you let yourself skip, the more you will get in the habit of when you don't feel motivated, you will skip jujitsu. But motivation is tough because how do you create it? Where does it come from? It definitely comes from being consistent. It definitely comes from having good habits. But like I said, sometimes we are just not motivated. And for me, something that's really simple is I don't try to stay motivated to train jujitsu. I try to stay interested. And the reason being, I listen to more and more parenting stuff as my son gets closer to getting here. And so there are certain things I really, really like and really like how people explain, but something they talk about, I don't even remember where I was hearing this. Might have been some type of podcast or something. Who listens to those? But they were talking about how most of the time kids are just uninterested with what they're being taught. And I this week at my church, I've had the ability to help with our vacation Bible school. And I do kind of the beginning, the opening, and the closing. I don't get a cool diabolical leader of the Head Nod Squad announcement. I'm just Mr. Josh. But in that time, I get to kind of deliver the first message to the kid. I get actually a lot of time, but I find that the kids just are uninterested no matter what I have to say, unless I can get it said in like 3 to 5 minutes and get them interested in whatever story that I had or whatever lesson that I have or whatever plan that I have. But you have to get people interested. It is this thing though that maybe maybe you're teaching children's church and you go, man, these kids, they won't listen. They are bad kids. But the truth is they are simply uninterested with what you have to say. Are you capturing their attention? And so we can all be self-motivated and use whatever other techniques there are, but you don't have to be self-motivated if you're just interested. Lazy people will come to jujitsu if they're loving it, if they are interested in it. I don't think it has as much to do with motivation, but just finding the things that keep you interested and then trying to keep the right schedule. I have a whole episode on schedule. It's called I Was Wrong About BJJ's Schedule, and it's just about habits. And so I think that unnamed listener, I think this would be a really good one for you. And, especially just anybody that struggles with motivation, struggles with keeping a consistent schedule. We kind of look at the book Atomic Habits and explain why people struggle to keep a good jujitsu schedule. Let's move on to the next one. Ooh, this is a really good one. So this person's a beginner. It's kind of a longer one, but the question itself is, what advice would you give for prioritizing which techniques to focus on mastering first? What advice would you give for prioritizing which techniques to focus on mastering first? That's a really long way. There's a really smart way. You can tell this person's more intelligent than I am. There's a really smart way to say, what should I learn first? What should be my first focus? And I really do talk to you guys all the time on the podcast about how important it is to focus, and how important it is to not just, I don't know, not just be random with your jujitsu training, but to actually be focused on how you should be getting better and what you should be doing. And so kind of advice that I would give is that there aren't techniques to master first. I just don't think that there are. My coach and I were actually talking about this on Monday. We're just talking about it a few days ago. We were my coach has this great Monday open mat that none of his students take advantage of. And so I just hang out with him and ask him a bunch of questions and stuff on Mondays. So shout out Watson martial arts students for not only being weird, but being lazy too on Monday open mats. But we were talking about, I don't know that there are techniques that are fundamental for jujitsu. What I mean by that is people would always tell me when I would ask, like, hey, how do you suck less at jujitsu? How do you get better? People love to tell me, focus on the fundamentals. And then I always ask, well, what are the fundamentals? And pretty much always the answer that I would get would be like, oh, closed guard armbar. Like, okay, so I can't be a black belt if I don't have a good closed guard armbar? Because I know tons of black belts that don't do closed guard armbars ever. Are they not black belts? I have black belts that will ruin your life that don't do closed guard arm bars. There are certain guys that are too big, too small, or the person they're going with are too big, too small to do closed guard arm bars. So does that mean, how can you say that that's a fundamental technique in jiu-jitsu? Right? I think that there are fundamental movements in jiu-jitsu. So what I would say is, if you are looking on what to focus on first, instead of just looking at techniques to focus on first, I would say the first thing you should focus on, if you're smaller, is guard retention. The first thing that you should focus on if you're bigger is smashed half guard passing and mount control. Okay. Those are not really specific techniques. Those are ideas of accomplishing goals that you're going to have to accomplish a lot. And so the reason I say this is because, this is actually exactly what my coach and I were talking about, is I don't really teach a ton of guards in my gym anymore. We focus almost all of our guard time on having better retention. Because if you have amazing retention, it really doesn't matter what guards you play. Nobody ever passes it. And then you get a lot of reps of actually being in your guard. You could even say bottom side control and then guard retention. And again, if you're a big guy, you could definitely do this too. You could definitely focus on guard retention first. Just generally for bigger guys, top is more prioritized. Top is just so important, being on top. And so having something to know where you're trying to get to from guard. I'm trying to get to smashed half guard on guys. No matter what guard they put me in, I want to get to smash half guard so I can work my way to mount, because those are the only two positions I know. If you focus on things like that, things that are huge parts of the jiu-jitsu game that really, really matter, especially for your division, you will get better faster than anybody else, because you're throwing out all the other stuff. They're all trying to learn everything, and you're just trying to learn important things. And so, again, this is, take anything I say with a grain of salt, but I don't think that there are specific techniques that someone has to know in order to be great at jiu-jitsu, or a great grappler, or even to be able to beat a lot of really high level guys. I do not think that, you look at all the top people in the world, I don't think that there's any one technique that just holds true that they all have to have. And that's why I say, if there is not that, if you can be great without it, then it is not fundamental. It is not a building block that you have to have. It's my random thought on this. Ooh, man, these questions. Come on, guys. These are good. Hey, Josh, I've heard many experienced practitioners talk about the importance of drilling. Could you share some effective drilling exercises for beginners that can help accelerate their program on the mats? Okay, so this is pretty ISHAJ talking point. It is not about like whether or not drilling is important, but really defining what drilling is. And, you use the term effective drilling, right? And so that's a really good word to use. I think it's important to understand what drilling is accomplishing. So to get good at anything, you need to understand it, and you need to get reps of doing it. And the better you understand, generally, the better your reps of doing it will be. So what drilling is, especially old school, what we would call deadpan drilling, with someone laying there. Most schools still do this, giving very, very little to no resistance, and you just hitting the move over and over and over and over again. And so that is how you would get extra reps of something, because you can't just expect to, in live rolling, hit that technique a bunch of times. You haven't gotten enough reps and you don't understand it enough, right? So that is why we drill. Okay. So anything that allows you to get reps, especially something that allows you to understand and get reps, is going to be super, super important for your training. So could you share some drilling exercises? So I will answer this question directly and then tell you what you should have asked. So one of the best drilling exercises that I think, when you look at deadpan drilling, trying to get the same exact technique over and over, is something that we would look at as, we call it repetitive drilling. You could look at it like chain drilling, but creating something that kind of connects jiu-jitsu together. When you drill a scissor sweep a bunch of times, that's a very, very, very specific situation, right? Usually you're drilling it with specific grips. You're usually drilling it when your opponent's on their knees. You drill this 10,000 times. You're like, my scissor sweep is unstoppable. And then somebody approaches you standing. And then you're like, whoa, crap. I don't know anything from here, right? Or other situation, you got really good at the scissor sweep, but you really didn't focus on getting from the actual sweep to getting on top of the person, especially when they're going to be resisting, and how you could do that. And then when you go to hit this scissor sweep that you've drilled 10,000 times, you hit the sweep and the dude gets up. Like, you hit the move that you practiced, but you didn't get to mount, or you didn't get on top even. And so this is kind of the idea of repetitive drilling. And that would be, what if you went scissor sweep to mount, to bottom mount, to escape, to half guard, to close guard, to scissor sweep, right? And so both partners are able to continue doing moves. This is something we used to do at my coach's all the time. And he was really good at creating these repetitive drills, and they work really well. A lot of the 10th Planet warm-ups, that's actually how I learned leg locks. Back in the unholy days of 2016, when no one even knew about leg locks, where they were just, whispered about in secret. I was probably a brown belt. And honestly, my leg locks and especially leg lock defense was terrible. And no idea what I was doing, but nobody really knew what they were doing and nobody could explain it really well. And so, since we couldn't really understand, what we did was we bought a bunch of the 10th Planet warm ups. I think it was 10th Planet Bethlehem on something. Maybe it wasn't BJJ Fanatics. I think it was Grappler's Guide, something like that. But we had these instructionals, and we would just go through them and go through them and go through them. And they would always chain a bunch of leg locks together, maybe into a back take, maybe into a finish, and a lot of them would repeat. And so I really think it allows you to kind of see things a little broader than just hitting the exact same really small move over and over and over again. Um, there is something called micro drilling. We won't get into that, but some people really dig micro drilling. So there are things to get into. But if that little thought, like that direct answer of create some repetitive drills isn't enough, you could always just re-listen to episodes 196, 198. They are everything I know about training method. And so I really dig into how to get reps in those episodes. What is our next question? Ooh, this is a really good one. I would have had a better answer written down, so I'll just go off the top of my head. But do you have any recommendation for jiu-jitsu books, blogs, or other resources that a beginner can use to supplement their training and deepen their understanding of the art? The I Suck at Jiu-Jitsu show. Number one, right? If you're trying to deepen your understanding of the art, I'm sure that there are better places, but I don't think there's a ton of better places to deepen your understanding of jujitsu. That's really, if you're an English speaker, that is really what we focus on, is how to understand jujitsu differently than 3 moves and roll live, and how to understand it deeper and just how to see it from the perspective of high level guys. And so definitely I Suck at Jiu-Jitsu. Now let's look at what else there is. Um, Man, jujitsu books. So I haven't opened it yet, but I just got Robert Drysdale's new book. He just sent me a copy. He's going to be on the show, and we're going to discuss it. So I can't tell you whether or not that's good, but that's there. Breathe by Hickson Gracie. People always have strong opinions about anything, especially when it comes to the Gracies. I find that jujitsu is substantially more fun if you don't put yourself in those arguments at all. You just learn jujitsu from whoever and you get inspired from whoever, because maybe this Breathe book, it gets you to look at breath work, which has nothing to do with any family, right? And it gets you to do something different in your training. Maybe he gives some perspective, some thoughts on certain things that you go, oh wow, that's a really cool, because he gives his perspective of fights, and hearing what a high level guy thinks while fighting is really, really important, because then you can try to think in those ways and get better. But that's a jiu-jitsu book I really, really loved. Really, really recommend. I'm big on reading really good self-help books for jiu-jitsu. I reference those more than any jiu-jitsu related book on the show. I'll always talk about the 4-hour work week, a great way to understand efficiency, not just in jiu-jitsu, but in everything, right? And that is what the show was based on, was really people aren't efficient with their jiu-jitsu training, and they don't really, the DEAL acronym in that book, defined, eliminate, automate, and liberate. We really don't liberate, I guess, in jiu-jitsu, but definition, really defining what you're trying to accomplish, and then eliminating the things that aren't helping you accomplish it, like shrimping up and down the mats, right? And then, like we talked about before, you automate, you try to find things that keep you inspired. So then you automate your YouTube channel and you subscribe to the right YouTubers. And so there are all these different things that you look at that specific book. But we talk about Atomic Habits. We've been I would normally cut out this lawnmower in the back or whatever that is. It sounds like someone is being put in a what is going on outside? Well, anyway, I can't cut it out because this episode's not getting edited. So um hopefully you guys can't hear it as loud as I can hear it. But anyway, the 4 Hour Work Week Atomic Habits, a great non-jujitsu book that will help you be better at jujitsu, or at least help you look at jujitsu. There are all kinds of different books on learning and things I think that can be really helpful. Um, but other resources to me, I think podcasts and YouTube are just by far and away the best ways to get to deepen your jujitsu understanding off the mats. I really don't even think it's close. You look at how much amazing material there is on just YouTube in general. You look at um, places that are branding their YouTube channel and branding themselves through their YouTube channel, like B Team, and they're just doing this branding. It's free for them to do this because YouTube is free. It's free for you to watch it. So they're putting out amazing content, so you will keep watching. I think that you look at, talk about him a lot on the show. You look at John Thomas. John Thomas is like his, trying to think of how it would even, I just, the whole YouTube channel, his whole entire from top to bottom. If you started with like the first video and you just watched through, especially if you're a gi guy, I promise you, you are going to have some amazing jujitsu perspective. You are going to go, wow, I really know these guards really, really well. I know guard retention really, really well now. That doesn't mean you can perform it, but also a really big recommendation. Always recommend Jake from Less Impressed, More Involved on YouTube. I think that he does a lot of people that like the conceptual style of how I teach and just how we explain jujitsu on the show tend to really like his content too. Because it's the same thing. You see things that happen a bunch, you point it out and you say, hey, this is important. You define it, and then you say maybe we should eliminate everything else. And yeah, those are some random ones. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I really like, especially any like good finds that people don't necessarily know about. I really don't have anything. Man, I really wish I would have written some down. I'll make sure that I do an episode on branding really soon. And at the end of it, I will give you guys all of my favorite jujitsu brands, things to look out for, and it will be a completely unsponsored episode. So you'll just know I'm just telling you what I like. And so yeah, we'll do that. So let's see. I think I have time for like 2 more questions and we will be good. Man, I don't know how you expect me to answer this question. Um, because yeah, this is a tough one. I guess I probably have time for one more question then if I'm going to answer the question about about finding balance between frequency and recovery, avoiding burnout and overtraining. These are the things that are really tough. So this person says, I sometimes find it challenging to find a good balance between training frequency and recovery. How do you recommend structuring a training schedule that allows for progress while avoiding burnout or overtraining? I'll tell you guys, I've been hitting this talking point about understanding the difference between um like I really progression training and performance training. Okay. When you look at progression training, meaning your job is to get better at jujitsu. The best way to do that, without a doubt, is not to roll live. Without a doubt, that is the best way. It's not just to roll live. It is to get reps of things that are important. Okay. So you can, if you're really good, you can roll live and just get reps of things that are important all the time and just beat everybody all the time. That is possible. But I don't think that that is sustainable. That is It's hard on your body. It's really hard to get the right looks all the time. You start to get good, maybe all your training partners aren't getting as good. It can be really, really tough. It can be really tough to do that. So I just think, trying to think of even how to answer this. This feels like 3 or 4 questions. But first of all, let's look at what if you're training too much? How do you even know that? How do because are you being a weenie or are you training too much? This is like, I think the biggest reason that we all struggle with overtraining, and we love jujitsu a ton. And so we're always thinking about it. We're always wanting to go train. It's so fun to go to the gym. Once you drill a little bit, usually you're pretty warm and you feel like you could go live. But is that sustainable? Is that the best way to get better? Anymore, I don't think it is. I think that training too much live can become too unspecific. And I think that you can train live with the right training partners, maybe somebody you're just substantially better than, or just the right training partner that you train with and it isn't at 100%. That being said, most people's training when you're rolling is going to be 100%. And it's very hard for any of us to manage that. It's very hard for any of us to say, well, I'm going to let this happen. I could use all of my strength and energy and keep this from happening, or I could let this guy pass. I'm not letting the guy pass. I'll die. I'll die before he passes. Right. And so it's very hard to separate, or it's very hard to just roll live all the time because you have no control of the intensity and it just breaks down your body. Jiu-jitsu is not easy on your body. And you see so many injuries, and most of the time they are because people are not recovered. They are overtrained. And in jiu-jitsu, we are habitually overtrained. And I'm going to give you guys the reason. Okay, I'm just going to hot take you guys here. Give you an old hot take from Josh. I've said this on other podcasts. I don't know if I've actually said this on our show before. But the jiu-jitsu training model is built around steroid use. The roll live every single day and roll really hard every single day, and every day is performance. That is only sustainable if you are in the top probably 0.01% of human beings, or I mean, one, you're really, really young and maybe you can get away with it. But if you are actually training intensely like that, and I've tried and tried and tried to do that because you see all the other guys doing it and they say that they claim that they train 3 times a day. And you're like, well, they train hard 3 times a day. That's crazy. But the truth is either they're lying or they are probably on something that allows them to recover and allows them to train that hard that often. But if you were going like truly 100% as hard as you could go, doing 4 or 5 rounds in a day where you're trying to score points, where you're trying to win on points, where you're fighting people that are maybe a little better, maybe just a little worse, or maybe right at your level. It's going to be really hard to wake up as a natural athlete, to wake up the next day and do that. And so separating days of training from today, I'm here to just progress, and then today I'm here to perform. And understanding you can probably, as a natural person, get 2, at the most 3 true performance days a week. But really, if you're trying to compete in jiu-jitsu, why would you need it? Right? When do you ever have to compete more than twice in a week? And that's it if you're competing at black belt adult and you advance to day 2 on the worlds or something, or ADCC and you advance to day 2. There aren't many times that you have to even perform twice in the same week in jiu-jitsu. So why do we focus on performance so much? And especially like think about our performance so much. You look at all your training and you go, oh man, I beat this guy today. I felt really great. And then the next day you lose to that guy. And one day you're happy and one day you're sad. One day you're like, oh, I suck. But you were the same dude. You brought the same jujitsu each time. But a lot of times, one day you just weren't recovered and the other day you were recovered. And so if you decide, hey, I'm going to create a performance day, an open mat is a great performance day because then you can decide who you do rounds with and stuff. But you go hard in that performance day. You focus on winning. You really, really go ahead and bring it. And remember the 10 commandments of jiu-jitsu competition. You celebrate no matter what your training looked like, even if your performance was absolutely terrible. You at least have a place to work from, but you first celebrate. You go, hey, today was really hard. I made sure of it. I made today this really hard thing. I am going to get a Smoothie King drink today or whatever your reward for yourself is. I'm going to take more steroids. I don't know, whatever your reward is. But just kind of in this thought process of, okay, these are my performance days. I do these to train hard and also to test out what I need to be working on and focused on during the week. Because now let's say that you're doing this on Saturday, but the rest of your week, you get to train like 2 or 3 other times. Don't go in and kill your body. Go in and focus on jujitsu. I have an episode about the best jujitsu advice I've ever gotten. It's about rolling without strength. Go in and roll without strength. Go in and say, hey, I could not escape side control during my performance day. And I even competed a couple weeks ago and I couldn't escape side control then. I'm going to let people pass my guard tonight because it doesn't matter that they pass and they're excited about it. And they're like, oh man, I passed this dude's guard today. Doesn't matter. You are trying to get good at escaping side control. It allows you, it makes it easier to have less of an ego in your training because people act like, oh, yeah, black belts don't have egos in training. That is just not true. I've been in the adult black belt scene for a while now. And I promise, at least when it comes to adult black belts, they have much bigger egos than anybody else in jiu-jitsu because they're the best. And you can't expect like, oh yeah, your ego is just going to be gone in jiu-jitsu. After you get submitted 10,000 times, it can be, but most guys that get to compete at the highest level, they got submitted for like 6 months and then they were the best guy in their gym. And then they're just amazing at jiu-jitsu. And so to say like, oh yeah, ego doesn't exist in jiu-jitsu or something like that is not true. But this will make that ego a little easier to control. And you'll get reps of going, hey, I'm here to get better. I'm not here to win. I'm here to get better. I'm not here to win. And then on days that you're there to win, you focus on winning. You try to, score points. You try to keep people down in positions. You try to wear them out. You don't just use jiu-jitsu technique. You practice your strategy. You practice the whole picture. And I really think if people just could separate performance training and get better training, and then make sure that their get better training doesn't kill their body, it would make their jiu-jitsu longevity. It would make it just so much easier to not deal with injuries. I have told you guys about how I was plagued with injuries for like 18 months. And that would have been that I'm like 18 months removed, a year removed from that now. And I found this idea of performance training and then separating my other training. Very little of my training anymore beats up my body. My performance day destroys my body and is absolutely miserable. But very little of my other training hurts me almost at all anymore. I feel fine after training most of the time, but I also am noticing I'm getting better and I'm getting better noticeably because instead of going in and saying, well, I don't have anything to work tonight, I'm just going to beat up people. I go, I know exactly what I'm working tonight. I'm going to beat people up with it. And that lets me get so much better. But I always get those things from my performance day. Wow, I could not finish my guard passes. I need to finish guard passes this week. And that's what I focus on. That's what I try to learn about. That's what I focus on understanding. And separating those two training will help you so much because you're not going to be in a constant state of being overtrained if you do it right. And the reason I say that is because you will start to, for your performance, naturally, you will do this to get your performance better. You will start to do things like, okay, I'm going to take off the night before performance day because I want to win tomorrow. and you'll start to actually know what it feels like for you to be well rested and to perform at a high level. And I think that this is, I really think I got a lot of this idea from Mark Vives when he was talking about focusing on how NFL players, how throughout a week they train and how they focus on skills, they focus on game plan, and then they perform 1 day a week, and how much that was like jujitsu. And when he explained that, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is big. This is exactly what I needed. And yeah, I actually am just getting to the end of my time that I have allotted for this episode. So I guess I will just finish with that thought on the long answer to, I should have just said this. I have no idea how to keep from overtraining, bro. Nobody in jujitsu does. It's just all we ever do. Overtraining is jujitsu. That's the real answer. And I guess that's what I'll leave you guys with. Hope you guys liked today's episode. I will be back with a real interview next week. Speaking of breath work, we'll be back with a real interview on Tuesday, and then a regular I Suck at Jiu-Jitsu show episode, as long as I can get everything working, um, on Thursday. And like I said, that's all I have for you guys today. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Sorry it was a bit random. There was some lawn mowing going on in the background, but we got it out. As they say in Atomic Habits, we kept the habit and reduced the scope. And I'm glad that we did that and we got to chat today. That's all I have for you guys. Hope you guys enjoyed today's episode, and I hope that it helps you guys suck just a little bit less at jiu-jitsu. Have a great day, guys.